Imagine opening a book and finding that the first letter is not just a letter, but a tiny world. It curls into vines, frames a saint, glows with color, and pulls your eye into the page before you have even read the first line. That is the power of an illuminated manuscript. These were handwritten books or documents decorated with borders, painted initials, miniature illustrations, and sometimes shimmering materials that made the page appear almost alive. They were not ordinary books with decoration added as an afterthought. The decoration helped shape how the text was seen, valued, and remembered. In a world before mass printing, an illuminated manuscript could be a sacred object, a legal record, a luxury possession, and a work of art all at once. The word illuminated suggests light, and that idea is central to how these books worked. Illumination did not simply mean putting pictures beside words. It meant giving a page visual force. Important sections might be marked by red text, elaborate initials, or a painted scene that guided the reader into the meaning of the passage. In religious books, this could turn reading into devotion. In official documents, it could make authority visible. Even a small decorative flourish told the viewer that this text was worth attention. These manuscripts were designed for a slower culture of reading, where the physical page mattered deeply. The book was not just a delivery system for information. It was part of the experience of understanding. Many illuminated manuscripts were created for the Roman Catholic Church, especially for prayer and liturgical use. Psalters, gospel books, missals, and other sacred texts were natural candidates for decoration because they were used in worship and treated with reverence. A beautifully made religious manuscript reflected the importance of the words it contained. The decoration helped organize complex texts, marked major divisions, and made key passages stand out. But it also served a deeper symbolic purpose. Beauty itself could be understood as an offering. Gold, color, careful handwriting, and painted figures all helped express devotion. For monks, priests, patrons, and worshippers, a richly illuminated book could make the sacred feel present on the page. Illumination eventually moved far beyond church settings. From the 13th century onward, decorated manuscripts increasingly appeared in secular life as well. Courts, noble families, legal offices, and wealthy patrons used embellished documents for proclamations, laws, charters, deeds, inventories, and enrolled bills. In these contexts, decoration communicated seriousness and legitimacy. A charter with careful script and ornament looked more authoritative than a plain note. A legal document that had been formally prepared and preserved signaled that the words had lasting force. In societies where power was often expressed through ceremony, seals, clothing, buildings, and visual symbols, the appearance of a document mattered. Illumination helped turn writing into a public statement of authority. The earliest surviving illuminated manuscripts date from late antiquity, roughly between 400 and 600 CE. Only a small number have survived from this period, but they are extraordinarily valuable. Works such as the Virgilius Romanus, the Virgilius Vaticanus, and the Rossano Gospels show that the relationship between text and image was already sophisticated long before the later medieval boom in manuscript production. These books stand at a crossroads between the ancient world and the medieval one. They preserve classical literature, Christian scripture, and early visual storytelling traditions in physical form. Their survival is also a reminder of how fragile book history can be. Most manuscripts from antiquity disappeared. The few that remain carry a disproportionate weight because they show us what was otherwise lost. Most illuminated manuscripts that survive today come from the Middle Ages, with many others from the Renaissance. This does not mean earlier cultures lacked decorated books, but medieval conditions allowed many examples to be produced, treasured, and preserved. Monasteries, churches, universities, courts, and professional workshops all contributed to manuscript culture. Some books were used constantly and wore out. Others were stored, repaired, inherited, or collected. Because a book can be closed, protected, and moved, manuscript paintings often survived better than murals or other large artworks exposed to fire, weather, reform, or renovation. That is why illuminated manuscripts are among the best preserved examples of medieval painting. In some places and periods, they are the only surviving painted art we have. The page itself was a major investment. For much of manuscript history, books were written on parchment, a writing material made from prepared animal skin. A finer form is often called vellum, traditionally associated with calf skin, though modern scholars are cautious about drawing too sharp a line between parchment and vellum because many kinds of animal skins were used. Preparing these pages required soaking, stretching, scraping, drying, and smoothing. Before a scribe wrote a single word, the manuscript already represented time, skill, and expense. Large books could require the skins of many animals. This is one reason illuminated manuscripts were precious. They were not only artistically costly. Their very surfaces were luxury materials, made through labor long before decoration began. Most illuminated manuscripts were bound as codices, the book format we still use today, with pages gathered and attached along one side. This format had major advantages over scrolls. A reader could open to a specific passage, compare sections, mark divisions, and handle large texts more easily. Manuscripts varied enormously in size depending on their purpose. A pocket gospel could be small enough to carry, turning sacred reading into something portable and personal. A choir book, by contrast, had to be large enough for several singers to read from at once. Atlantic Bibles could be so large and heavy that lifting them required more than one person. Size was not accidental. It reflected the social setting in which the book was meant to function. Creating an illuminated manuscript often required multiple specialists. A scribe copied the text by hand, usually planning the layout carefully and leaving spaces for decorative elements. Rubricators added red headings, instructions, or emphasized text known as rubrics. Illuminators painted initials, borders, and miniature scenes. In expensive projects, the design had to be coordinated so that script, image, and decoration worked together. A large initial might announce the beginning of a major section. A miniature might summarize a biblical episode or literary moment. A border might frame the page like architecture around a sacred or prestigious text. The result was not a random collection of pretty details. It was a structured visual system that helped the reader navigate and value the manuscript. The margins of manuscripts could be surprisingly active. Marginalia included notes, corrections, diagrams, translations, reminders, and sometimes strange or comic drawings. These additions show that manuscripts were not frozen museum objects in their own time. They were used, studied, handled, and personalized. A reader might add an explanation beside a difficult passage. A scribe might correct an error. An artist might decorate the edge of the page with animals, hybrid creatures, or playful scenes. Some marginal images seem humorous, even mischievous, standing in contrast to the seriousness of the main text. Margins reveal the human side of manuscript culture. They show readers and makers thinking around the text, responding to it, and sometimes having fun with it. Paper entered European manuscript culture during the late Middle Ages and gradually became more common for textual manuscripts. One unusually early example is the 11th century Missal of Silos from Spain, produced near the paper manufacturing centers of Al-Andalus. Paper was cheaper and increasingly practical, but it did not immediately replace parchment in luxury illuminated books. Parchment remained associated with durability, prestige, and tradition. For patrons, commissioning a manuscript meant to impress, endure, or serve a sacred purpose, the older material still carried authority. This transition shows that technological change is rarely instant. New materials can spread quickly in ordinary use while older, expensive materials remain preferred for ceremonial or high-status objects. Manuscript culture adapted, but it did not change all at once. Printing eventually transformed the world of books. Early printed books still borrowed heavily from manuscript habits. Printers often left spaces for red rubrics, decorated initials, and illustrations to be added by hand. This tells us that readers continued to expect books to have visual hierarchy and crafted beauty. But once printing made it possible to reproduce texts faster and in larger numbers, fully hand-copied illuminated manuscripts declined rapidly. They continued into the early 16th century, but in smaller numbers, mostly for the very wealthy. Their legacy, however, is immense. Thousands survive, preserving medieval painting, religious life, legal culture, and the long history of how humans turned information into objects of beauty. Illuminated manuscripts are not just old books. They are some of the clearest windows we have into the medieval imagination. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.